Well, hello gang, this is Crash here from the Crashcast podcast, and I'm here to talk to you about a fascinating little project that I've been working on as of late. Multi-rotors have been the thing for us over at the Crashcast podcast. This last summer, in fact, we did the Summer of Multi-Rotor and FPV. Well, during that time, I worked up my own little frame, trying to fit a little niche market. We've been doing what I call the OPQ, or one-piece quad. And it's lightweight. It allows for 8 and 9 inch props. It has a 346 millimeter span, so it'll allow up to a 9 inch prop. It'll take just about any motor, and it's a great little frame. These things, I'm offering them in 2 colors. I'm offering them in black or white, mainly because the material that I buy to work these things up is only available in black and white. So anyway, they weigh about 6 ounces. They are nearly indestructible. I can't say they are fully indestructible because, you might break it. But we've had reports of people bending the heck out of them. In fact, they're very flexible. They are flexible enough that you can put a bend on it, but you can just bend it back. You will not break this frame. In fact, we've had some instances where people have received them from the mail, as I've mailed them out, and they've had a little bit of a bend to them. Just bend it back, get it nice and flat, and it's going to work for you. It's just flexible enough to absorb some impact when you hit the ground with it, but not so flexible that it's going to feed back negatively into your flight stabilization system. Now, for more information on this project, you can see my entire article over at allthingscrash.com. And I'll even tell you our recommended electronics to use on it, for motors, speed controllers, flight stabilization, the whole lot. And I sell these things for, right now, $35 each plus shipping. And for a nearly indestructible frame, I think that's pretty darn cheap. Anyway, the purpose of this build video, I'm going to try to go through it as briefly as possible, which is going to be a feat for me because you guys already know I tend to be a little long-winded. So anyway, I'm going to try to brush over real quick a typical build so you'll know what you're getting into when you get one. And if you have any questions, just put them in the comments section, in the video, and I'd be happy to answer them for you. So with that, let's get started. Okay, briefly, I want to brush over here a couple of features of this frame design, and I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it. My studio here is kind of dark. My workshop is dark. I'll try to contrast them here so that you can see. But I've included a 5/16 hole as a shaft relief on this frame so that you can use just about any motor. We are using X-mount type motors, but we're not using the X-mount. You may be able to see, if I get it there, we've got motor slots, and you'll actually screw. I'm using, this is a 1/4 inch thick frame, so I'm using M3 screws, 10 millimeters long, and I'm finding that is enough to bite into the motor without it being too long to get into the windings. You might be able to get by with an 8 millimeter screw. I recommend a 10 and a washer if you can. Anyway, that's going to allow you to mount just about any motor. You can use your Blue Wonder type motors, your Emax motors, but in the case of the Blue Wonder motor, everybody loves those, but I hate to use them because I have a hard time getting them to balance. And then if you smack the ground with it one time, the shaft, is likely to bend and then throw that motor out of balance, and you'll forever get feedback into your flight stabilization system. So that's something to look at. As well, on each of these frames, there is a little hole here. That hole is threaded for 1/4 20. You can use, if you should so desire, a frame like this doesn't really have to have landing gear. But I like to have landing gear on everything, if nothing else to, protect my battery when I land. But I've got some 1.5 inch long, 1/4 20 nylon bolts that thread right into the holes, and then I secure it with a nylon jam nut. Again, 1/4 20, of course. And that allows the frame to sit down nice and flat and protect the battery a little bit. Now, I will say, in a hard crash, you're going to snap those off. But it's, I like a landing gear better than nothing. Others have used pool noodles, and I'll just show you, on the old QSC frame, you can actually cut a pool noodle and zip tie that onto the arms. I believe it was my buddy Alan, Florida that came up with that and said, hey, you can do this. So you might even consider that. Just zip tie them onto the boom, onto the bottom side, and you'll be good. I forgot to mention previously, the frame weighs 6 ounces, and again, near indestructible. Another feature that I've added to it, and I doubt we're going to be able to see it, maybe I can get the angle just right, but I have a series of dimples all the way around the ring here. These are spaced at 45 millimeters, bolt hole to bolt hole, and they allow you to use a board that has spacing of 45 millimeter. For instance, here is a power distribution board from my buddy White Spy over at Ready to Fly Quads. I love these things. No more trouble making power distribution harnesses when you got one of these. As well, for this particular quad, we're going to put on a Ready to Fly Quads Pro 2 board because I'm going to experiment with GPS capability with this one. And although it's going to be difficult to see, you can line up your board and get it nice and straight based upon those very small dimples. And those 8 of them there, so it allows you to set up an X configuration or a plus configuration. So I'll leave that up to you. And if you've noticed, there's a little hickey on this frame. That was a little mistake, and I'm going to use it for my own. I don't sell frames like that to others. So anyway, the first thing we're going to do, I'll set this aside, is I'm going to say mount your motors. We're going to mount the motors first. I have a complete setup here with motors and speed controllers from a previous quad project, so I'm going to use those. And I'll show you how we get these things mounted up and in place so that you can fly your quad. Now, something that I'm going to recommend, because these frames don't really have, we rely on the color of the propellers to give us orientation. As well, I'm going to put lighting on this thing, some LED lights, so I can differentiate front to back and fly it at night. But as you get started, it's going to be hard to say which is front, which is back. Keep scratching your head trying to figure out. I'm just going to put a little piece of painter's tape on here, and this painter's tape is going to tell me, Crash, this is front. Now, I know that that's going to be the front. And I suggest you do something like this yourself so that you don't have headaches down the line. So I'm going to get set up here quickly to show you how to put motors on, and join me again shortly. Okay, if you were paying attention when I showed you the first quad that I have, this one right here, you'll notice that the speed controllers are on the top of the arms here. Okay, well, what I'm electing to do on the build that I'm doing now, and you can do this either way. I've got speed controllers actually mounted on the bottom side of the booms there. Now, to show you, I've got the motors mounted, and I just used my 4 M3 by 10 millimeter screws with washers, made sure everything was centered up nicely, and I've got all 4 motors mounted. I've got the speed controllers mounted, and I have put a Velcro patch down there to hold them in. What I'll end up doing before I'm ready to fly this is I'll actually put a zip tie around that boom just to give that speed controller just a little extra, I guess, hold in case I smack it in the ground. Now the next part that we want to try to get into is mounting our power distribution board. Again, these are obtained from Ready to Fly Quads, and they are such a convenience. They make putting a quad together so much easier because those darn wiring harnesses are such a pain. I'm going to be using one from another project. You can see here I've actually got plugs on this one, so if I needed to change out a speed controller I can, but there's nothing saying that you can't just solder your speed controller power leads direct to these boards. And if I look back, and if you look closely, you can see, there are call-outs for positives and negatives, and I would tell you, go ahead and populate it all up nicely, and go ahead and throw a couple of extra wires on there if you're thinking about adding lighting to your quad later, because then there's no more soldering, it's just plug it in. All right, now, the next thing that I intend to do here is I'm going to mount a power distribution board and then get ready to mount a flight controller to it. And this is going to take a little thought on your end. There's a couple of different ways of doing this. My buddy Hans came up with a really neat idea whereby you can put your power my zip ties are too big, I guess. But you can get a good quality zip tie. I'm not talking about the Harbor Freight stuff. I'm talking about a good quality electrician's zip tie. These are a little big. And you can actually run the zip tie down through your flight controller board with a spacer on there, and then through the power distribution board, and then again with another spacer, and then drill a hole straight down through your frame, and then you'll cut off a piece of the end of the zip tie and use that to secure. Pull everything nice and tight, and then bam, you've got everything mounted where it can break away if you need it to. Now for me, what I intend to do on this project, put that away, like I said, I'm not running the Flip 1.5 on this particular one like you see here. The Flip 1.5 now comes with you can get it with a protective case, and at that point you can just double sticky mount it to the top of your power distribution board. Makes it real easy like that. Well, they don't make, unfortunately, Paul over at White Spy over at Ready to Fly Quads doesn't yet make one for a Pro 2 board. So I've elected to put on another product that he has. He calls it the Carl Proof Dome. And that's going to protect my GPS and my flight stabilization system and all that by putting this on. So that's the route that I'm going to go, and I'm going to use a little bit different hardware to mount up with. I'll set that aside for now. But the intent is that I will put this power distribution, I'll actually probably run it like this so I can have the battery connector come out the bottom side. Also, by using that dome, that's the reason I didn't put speed controllers on the top of the arms. And then I've got some servo screws, which are a number 6 screw, and I've got some smaller spacers, and I'm actually going to use those to mount the stabilization board. And then I'm going to use just some PC hardware. You might be able to get this at Radio Shack, but any good computer supply is going to have a selection of these standoffs, and they're threaded so that you've got, in this particular one, I've got a screw on one side and a plastic bolt with a plastic nut or nylon on the other side. So that's what I'm going to use, and that will allow me to go back later and add the GPS on top as well. So I'm going to do that now, and I'll do that off camera. I'm going to take my props off because we're going to be getting ready to power this up before too much longer. So that's where we are right now. Okay, in this picture here, or in this view, you can see that I've got my power distribution board mounted, and also I've gone through here and put Velcro on the bottom, and then I've got a little strap here as well. I usually take my batteries, and on my batteries I usually pretty good Velcro strap or piece of Velcro on it, and by setting it up as I have here, I can stick it on there nice and in the center, but also if I want to do aerobatics with this, generally just the Velcro is all you need. But if you're going to start flipping and tumbling and so forth, you may want to also put a little strap on there. And that'll just keep it all secured nicely. And what I have used, it fits good. What I have used here to secure my Velcro strap is I've just used a couple of half inch roughly, quarter inch long number 4 screws, just little wood screws. I drilled a 1/16 inch pilot hole, popped them in there, and then I also made sure that they were separated enough so that my battery could not come in contact with the head of those screws. So now also you'll be able to see here with this power distribution board, these speed controllers they have long wires. And your speed controllers may have that as well. Well, that's okay because there's a hole in your distribution board and there's a hole in the frame. You can actually take your excess wire and coil it up and tuck it down in there, and everything will be just fine. You don't have to worry about using tons of zip ties and so forth. So that's what you're going to want to do. That's whether you mount your speed controllers to the top of the booms or to the bottom as I've done. That's what you want to do. The next thing I'm going to do is I'll plug that on here. Let's see here. Something else that I need to talk about. I made some notations on allthingscrash.com to warn you guys about some things. You want to, when you're setting this up, at this point of your construction, and you're going to say, hey, it's time to calibrate my speed controllers and bind my receiver. So the first thing I would do is bind your receiver. And you can do that simply by taking one of your speed controllers, plugging it in, and just remember which one, plug it in, plug a battery in to our power distribution board like I've got there, and then that's going to light up that motor. And what you'll do is if you look on the web, there are instructions on how to calibrate. And I believe what it is, I calibrated all of my stuff a long time ago, but you want to turn the transmitter on, put your throttle at, I don't know, low, whatever, and turn the receiver on, plug in your battery so your receiver and your speed controller have all of their power, and then go full throttle and wait for the chime. And as soon as the chime is completed, then come all the way back down to low throttle and listen to the chime. And then you've got a speed controller calibrated. And then you can do that for each of the 4 speed controllers. The reason that we have to do that is we have to make sure that all 4 brand new speed controllers understand the entire ppm stream range that the receiver's putting out. So that's what you would want to do at this point, and as well you can make certain that your speed controllers are turning the correct direction. And the way I always remember it is when we put a prop on, like let's say I'm going to put this one on, the way I look at it, this is the front of my quad, this is the back, and the props are going to come around and meet in the middle. So I need this one to turn clockwise. As well, this one, this is the right front. I'm expecting that it's going to come around, looking at the front outside, and it's going to meet in the middle. Again, for the back, when it spins, it's going to come around the back and meet the other one in the middle, and the same thing here. So you expect that those are going to spin that direction, and then the front are going to spin that direction. You'll notice that they're coming, the back ones are coming back, meeting in the middle, and these are coming front and meeting in the middle. If that helps you, that's the way I look at it. I saw a diagram, I've just remembered that diagram. So our next step is going to be to mount our flight stabilization board. Of course, I'm using the Pro 2. If you were using the Cool Flip or some other one, you could mount it like I've got it here. It's just double sticky to the power distribution board. But now, after our speed controllers have been calibrated, now we want to plug in all of our speed controllers to the input side, to the speed controller side of our board. And I'm going to do that now. Okay, there we have it. This version of my OPQ selection is now complete. Let's see, I have not fastened the dome down. I will do that. I've got, now this one, like I said, this one's going to be for experimenting with multi-wii GPS and so forth. But the way that I normally mount my receivers, see if I can get it in here where you can see it, I usually just put a receiver on the side and put Velcro on that 1/4 inch there of the frame, as well as on the speed controller just underneath. And see if you can see how I've done that. And then I've got a Bluetooth adapter here as well. And then I've brought my satellite receiver to the front. And anyway, that's basically, we're ready to go with this. The only thing that's left to do, like I said, I like to go in and take some zip ties, and I will zip tie around speed controllers. This, I'll catch the speed controller and the Bluetooth. I'll take some smaller ones and just capture my satellite receiver there, and then I'll go around the receiver and finally the speed controller there. So with that, this thing's ready to fly. I've outfitted this one with 8-inch props. I'll probably run it with a 2200 battery, and that will give me a fairly efficient and decent flight time. And that's basically it. Now, I don't expect that everybody's going to build one quite as elaborate as this. I've got a lot of stuff on there. But this is the one I've built for aerobatics and set it up for cheaper gear. And I've got, again, the multi-weave flip 1.5 in the protective case, double sticky to the distribution board. I've got the 16 amp speed controllers on this one. I've got the $10.50 red motors, 9-inch props. Flies great with a 2200. Put a 3S 1300 on it, and look out. Anyway, I hope you guys have found this build informative. And the good thing is about the OPQ frame, it's great for a beginner. If you've been flying a small quadcopter, something more like a 1SQ, or even a V202 Scorpion from MassiveRC.com, and you're ready to step up to something bigger, this is what you want to go with. This is a great frame for beginners because you can set it up nice and tame. You can set it up to where it's real easy to fly, and with the same motors and speed controllers, you can go back and make it just crazy just by changing props and changing batteries. I have also heard as well it's light enough that with these power systems you can get by with a 2S battery, which might be able to make you able to use some batteries that you still have in your flight box, maybe a 2S 2000 or 2S 2200. Also, maybe you want to put in a 2S pack out of a 1/10 scale RC car. Anyway, I hope you found this informative. If you have any questions, ask away. But the reason I did this video is I wanted to show you just how easy it is to put together an OPQ quad. Thanks for watching.